All right, so just as a heads up for everybody that's already on the call, we are live streaming now.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hi. Hi, Katie. Hi,
How are
Kara.
you, Sean?
Hi, Beth.
I might be the only one. I'm going to go ahead and mute.
What's up? Can you hear me?
There you go. Hi, Sean. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can hear everybody. We are live streaming. We started that about 2 minutes ago, and then I have gone through for people who are part of this meeting but not presenting yet. I have turned off their video, and we'll either have them turn it on or they can turn it on as they get to their relevant specific parts of the meeting. All the board members and Sean will be on throughout the whole meeting, though.
Yeah, and we're going to give it another minute or here so we can get Gary and Lily and Jace. No, Jason's on. I'm sorry, Gary and Lily on is what I meant to say. And I will warn everybody when we start, I am going to have us stand up and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I'm just telling everybody, FYI.
Okay.
Okay. We'll just give Gary another minute or so here. Okay, I think we have everybody. Board members, will you just give me a thumbs up if you can hear? Everybody can hear? Okay, all right, good. Jason, you can hear? All right, okay, fantastic. All right. Okay, I think we're ready to start. So adequate notice has been given for this virtual meeting. We are going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance to that flag that's in Sean's background. So I guess we'll start. I'm going to put my thing and stand up. All right. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Great, thank you, everybody. So we're gonna move on, Sean, to recognizing our own.
Yes. Thank you. So as people were walking by the window outside, they just saw me do the pledge standing up. They're probably just wondering what I'm doing by myself in the office giving the pledge. Good evening, everyone. As part of our board meetings, we have been cognizant of making sure that we spend time in each of our schools to learn a little bit more about what's happening in our schools, learning what great things are happening, and getting to interact with our students and our teachers. And so we are going to continue that today by recognizing Glenridge. Glenridge is our last school that we were going to recognize. And so we're very happy to have on our call tonight Beth Scott, who's the principal, and a few teachers who are going to talk a little bit about some of the work that they've done. I just want the board to know that next week, we're going to be celebrating National Teacher Appreciation Week. And so I just thought it's very timely to be able to bring a few teachers onto our call tonight to recognize them for their work and for them to speak about what they've been doing so far with our continued learning. So I'm going to turn it over to Beth Scott, and she's going to give you a little bit of an overview and then have our teachers talk. Beth, you're muted.
Okay, here we go. Can you hear me now? All right, let me share. Hello, everybody. It's really great to see most of your faces here. How I wish I was looking out into an audience right at Glenridge Elementary School. You know, it's a beautiful building with so much to offer. You just sense and feel what energy is in the space when it comes to teaching and learning, interacting, being a school community. And now more than ever, I think we've really learned to appreciate that spot for us as teachers and faculty members in that place called Glenridge and in the greater district of the school district of Clayton. So I appreciate this opportunity. I wish that you were at Glenridge School, and so an alternative plan has come forth. Our teachers have worked tirelessly throughout the school year, in fact, to bring forth the best teaching environments that they can for children. And now in this last quarter of our school year, they've been turned on their heels a bit. And I can't tell you just how very proud I am of the response that I've witnessed just really overnight, literally. Today, this evening, Sean and I talked about this and thought, how can we best represent the elementary experience? And I have with me two teachers. Katie Bickert is a kindergarten teacher. She teaches our youngest learners. Kara Barnes teaches our oldest learners at Glenridge School, our 5th grade students. Both serve on very strong teaching teams. It's something that we really strive for and appreciate how we can work together to effectively reach our children. And they have stepped up as strong teammates and are representing their team this evening to talk about the children in their care. So without further ado, let's start with Katie. She'll talk from the kindergarten perspective, and they'll be followed by Kara, who will talk from the 5th grade teaching learning perspective. And if you have questions, you can interrupt if you'd like, or we'll take time at the end. Okay, so on to Katie.
Hi, good evening. And thank you so much for inviting me to speak tonight about our kindergarten journey with continued online education. At this time, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with everyone as I talk a little bit more about the journey that we have launched. Let me just get to our presenting. All right, so our journey with online education, really the thought process started at the beginning. Oh, excuse me. Okay, I practiced this to make sure that this wouldn't happen. I'm so sorry. I actually practiced this several times. I'm just running the slideshow instead of, okay. Okay, I'm going to stop for a minute and see if I can get this back. You have my utmost apologies. All right. No, I don't know. I'm so sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay. Take two. All right. At the start of our continued learning, we talked as a team and determined that the two most important goals that we really thought that we needed to focus on were, number one, to maintain our community connection. That social learning piece is so vitally important to our kindergarten learners. And the second was to make sure that we had platforms that were easy for our families to navigate, due to the fact that, of course, our kindergartners, especially at the beginning of this journey, would not be able to demonstrate much independence. And so in thinking about that, our first goal, those community connections, what we decided to do was to establish a daily morning meeting. Every day at 9 o'clock, we have a Google Meet set up, and this provides the opportunity for our kindergartners to share and to talk with each other each day. It gives us a chance to do kind of an emotional check-in. Sometimes it's a quick, thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs in the middle. It also gives us an opportunity to continue some established routines, such as our calendar routines that we do on a daily basis. It also provides opportunities for our kindergartners to continue to practice those really important skills, such as turn taking, such as listening when others are sharing, and such as sharing their own thinking with each other. And then also some fun opportunities for body movements, such as go noodle breaks. And those are things that were part of our morning meeting when we were physically at school, and we're thrilled to be able to continue that daily with our kindergarten learners. So in thinking about that second goal, those platforms that are easy for families and that would start to encourage independence with our youngest kindergarten learners, we decided that working off of one main document each day for parents would be easiest for them to navigate. And that document would contain all of the learning activities for the day. So it would contain the link to our morning meeting. It would provide optional activity choices for families who want a little additional activities and things to do. And also any video links to direct instruction that we as a kindergarten team are providing. This is an example of what that document looks like. Embedded in the document, as I said, links to our daily morning meeting, and then the objectives for the lessons being presented that day. There would also be any links, again, to direct instruction that the families could click on to access that, and I will show you some examples of that in just a moment. If there are any tools that we think would be beneficial to the students learning for that day, they're also linked to this document. And so it also, again, at the end, provides some ideas and links for enrichment or additional activities for families to access on a daily basis. And so we as a kindergarten team, and I think a lot of teams throughout the district have really worked in a collaborative way so that each of the different content areas, the direct instruction is provided by one of the kindergarten teachers. And so I'd like to show you some examples of those. We are fortunate in kindergarten that our kindergartners really, even prior to this new type of learning, had established relationships with all of the kindergarten teachers. That's due to time that was spent in different classrooms during our inquiry time, kind of depending on the activities that were presented in each classroom. Kids would sometimes decide to go to a different kindergarten classroom during that inquiry time. We had launched a project-based learning unit in writing, and it was all around the idea of how-to learning, and it was given our students a chance to teach next year's kindergartners, since they're current experts in kindergarten, teach next year's kindergartners some things about kindergarten, such as how to hang up your backpack, how to go through the cafeteria line. And the students were able to demonstrate that either by writing books, by making posters, by producing a video. And so depending on what they wanted to do, the kindergarten students were mixed up and in different classrooms. So the fact that each teacher is now delivering direct instruction, I think still feels very natural to all of our kindergartners, because we were fortunate that they do have established relationships with the entire kindergarten team. And so just a few examples of the work that's some of the direct instruction, some of the videos. This is my colleague Jen Riley, and this was a very early kind of launching point for our kindergarten writing. And I'm going to play just about the first minute of her video for you.
So Katie, we're not getting any audio right now. So unplug your ear pods while you're playing that video, and that should fix it.
Okay, and try it. Would you like me to? Did that help?
Turn up the volume on your computer, because it worked this afternoon when we tried it.
Okay, now I can't hear. Did that help at all?
It did not. So you need to unplug your ear pods and turn up the volume on your actual laptop, and that should work.
Okay.
We miss you, and we love you so much. And I hope you're ready for a new adventure in learning. It's going to be interesting and fun, I hope. So let's get started. If you are here with me, then that means that you set up your iPad and you got to Google Classrooms, and you also found this document, which is our a hyperdoc that we will be posting every day. We thought it would be helpful to have everything in one place so that you can have links to everything and all the information that you need each day. Now, with that being said, we know that there are a lot of things going on right now. So many of you are working from your home now.
And we're just going to cut that at about a minute. This next video is of Shelby Boschert, who is actually the Missouri State intern that's been working in Jen Riley's classroom each day.
Hi friends, we've been learning a lot about syllables and word work lately, and you guys are all doing an excellent job. I'm so proud, and Mabel would be so proud too. Some things we've learned about syllables is that every word has at least one syllable, and every syllable has at least one letter. But did you guys know that you can use syllables to help you spell bigger and better words? If I wanted to try to write the word excited, but I wasn't quite sure how to write that, I can use the syllables to help me. Watch and I'll show you. I'm going to clap them out first. Excited. Okay, I hear 3 syllables in the word excited. So I'm going to start on my board with my first syllable. Okay, Well, from my vowel power, I know that sounds a lot like
And so that's just a brief snapshot of how the direct instruction is, the students are able to access direct instruction. And so we know that there are a lot of platforms that students are able to use to share their learning. And what we found is that Seesaw is the most user-friendly for our youngest learners. We find that it's easy for the students and families to navigate, to show their learning, and also to get feedback from their teachers. And I just wanted to show you a few artifacts. So for example, this still provides the opportunity for our kindergartners to practice writing their numerals, which is really important for our kindergartners, because as you can see, there are still some backwards numbers. So being able to still provide those practice opportunities while working with team members and delivering content, and then being able to provide the feedback both On Seesaw, you can type in written feedback, and it could be something like, great job with your counting, be careful with your number 3, to being able to deliver oral and verbally give feedback to our students. This is an example of a learning artifact for writing. Seesaw is a nice platform for our kindergartners. They can do activities directly on Seesaw. They can do work such as a writing piece and then take a picture and post it so that the teachers are also able to offer feedback. And there also is an opportunity for them to record themselves so that we can hear their thinking and their learning. This next slide is an example of a kindergartner who has recorded some syllable work that they were learning about, as you heard from the lesson by Ms. Boschert. Oh, I don't know why it keeps.
Star, door, bread, clock, fish, car, apple, rainbow, flower, snowflake, turtle, balloon, elephant, unicorn, octopus, umbrella, volcano, banana.
And so the nice thing is that, again, we can also provide both written and oral feedback to our youngest learners as well. And so I do want to thank you for your time, for your continued support of both our students, our staff, our school. As I started this, I told my kindergartners we were going to think of this as an adventure because we were going to be exploring new things and we might make some wrong turns, but then we could get ourselves right again. And we were going to learn things that we never thought we would learn before, and that we were just going to continue to learn and grow our brains. And I think that our kindergartners and their families have truly embraced all of the work that we have been doing. So again, I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Next.
Sorry, could not find my mute. And then we have Kara. Do you have?
Yes.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me show you what 5th grade has been up to. So I think you're going to see some similarities with kindergarten. When 5th grade met to decide what are our priorities for our 5th graders. Oops, come on. We had 2 goals. One was to build community with teachers and students, but also with each other. You know that 5th graders are so social, and being the spring term, they've got Y down on the brain and they want to spend time with each other. So we wanted to embed that. And then also our goal for this year has really been empowerment, taking lead on their learning and growing. And we wanted to infuse that into our distance learning as much as we could. So to build community, we scheduled lots of Google Meets, small group, big group. We had been using the tool Flipgrid. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, where the students can record videos to a prompt. But this time we changed it up a little bit so that they can respond to each other. So we gave them something to complete on Flipgrid, and then we asked other 5th graders to give them feedback. So that's been a really popular choice. And then Chambord, which is a Google Suite feature. It's like a virtual bulletin board where you can quickly throw up Post-its or images or links to other things. And we've created those across the grade level so that they can all have access to it and, just kind of collaborate with each other. they're very familiar with Google Docs and Google Slides. They already know how to share that. So we've tried to infuse that into some of the things we do, just so it's not just teacher and student, but it's a lot of student and student communication. And then the empowerment, we're trying to get them excited about their learning, even though they're at home and they really want to be at school. So offering a wide range of choices. And then we've also kind of dangled this carrot about students as teachers. So this has looked different in our classes, but people that are kind of rocking it, they can mentor a friend, or they can come up with actually the lesson idea or be part of our teacher video, but stepping up as a leader, as a fifth grader, to show what learning looks like. So here's our menu board that we push out every Monday. So this is a week ago. We decided that we would push out our work on Monday and have it due on Friday. And we've told the kids, this is your menu board. There's 4 corners. Those are the must-do tasks. So there's tasks in reading, writing, math, and building community. Those are non-negotiables. You have to get those things finished. But you're a curious, empowered learner. We have lots of can-do choices on the menu board. We started this menu board the very first week, so we've really worked to kind of keep the format the same so it's predictable for our parents and our students. They know what's expected. So here is writing. So this is the must-do slide. It tells them the 3 things they need to do. Everything's hyperlinked to either videos we've created, documents with, like our non-negotiables about editing, links to Google Classroom or Seesaw or Flipgrid. So they're pretty savvy with all the links. We've gotten a little bit smarter about, questioning them. We're putting little Easter eggs in our videos just to make sure that they're really watching them, so they're getting the teaching points. But when they do this work, they get to manage themselves. We are each having office hours every day, so we can check in with them and say, hey, you had 3 must-dos on writing. Where are you? And do you need support? How can I help you? Things like that. But most of our kids are having no trouble getting through these. So then we're offering something like this. So this is the can-do slide for writing. There's 8 choices. Some are online, some are offline. We've got some feedback from parents and kids that they don't like being tied to their Chromebook for so much of the day. So we're offering them some suggestion that gets them off the computer. They've enjoyed that. And this is just to grow themselves as an empowered learner. We're doing that for reading. So this is the reading must-do slide, and then the reading can-do slide. And we ask for feedback every Friday from the students on what they liked, what they explored. Sometimes our can-do choices change every week, and we always know it's popular if they want it to stick around. They're like, no, Wonderopolis is so fun, keep it there. So some of these choices have been there a few weeks. And then here's math. I've been part of the math planning, and we're actually meeting as a district. We started solo, and then it was decided that we really should collaborate. So I meet weekly with a 5th grade teacher from Captain and Merrimack with one of our math coaches. And we've identified the concepts that we didn't get to in the classroom that are kind of essential for 5th graders. So we're all pushing out the same content, but in our own style. So right now, all of 5th graders are focused on geometry, 2 and 3D geometry. It's one of the goals we didn't get to before school closed. Here's our can-do options. We have some social studies, and then we're really working hard on building community. So we're offering some community options. The biggies have been Flipgrid. Flipgrid was a tool that we used a lot before school closed, so they were comfortable with it. The one thing that we changed was that we allowed students to respond to each other. So here's an example. The students are working on a 5-paragraph essay that is one of the big writing units of 5th grade. And normally they would get feedback from each other in the classroom, but we decided this way they could present a video and share it with the grade level and get video feedback. So bit of one of my writers.
Today I present to you my claimable letter memoir. If you can speak, you can influence. If you can influence, you can change lives. You got picked as an assembly leader. Yay! You're missing recess. Nay. You have been practicing for a week. You got this. You're backstage. You see 400 plus people waiting for you. Go walk on stage. It's your time to shine. You have to speak slowly and.
So she's a great writer, dramatic. But then what's been great is she gets feedback from other 5th graders about her piece.
So I really like your thing, but maybe you should like tweak it so you're not actually directly addressing the students, since it's about your moment. And I'm wondering, what is the climax and the problem in the story? So, bye.
Hey, Peppa. I really loved your story and how many details it had, like the part about being loud and, you know, how many people there were out there. I think maybe you could talk more about the experience, like how it went, and some suggestions for them when they're up there. So, well, you did say some, but maybe more. So that's it. Bye.
So that's been pretty popular choice. They really, every week they're like, are we going to do Flipgrids? Are we going to talk to each other? So we've also explored with Chambord offering, it's that virtual bulletin board. This is just one of the choices where we popped up a social studies video and we wanted to get them thinking about the Revolutionary War. And then boom, all these questions and comments and connections. So it's not only connecting with us, but it's connecting with each other that we see has been a powerful choice for them. In addition, we also use Seesaw. What as a teacher I love about Seesaw is they love recording themselves. You know, 5th graders, it's the selfie generation, so they don't mind doing audio. And it's a great way to show understanding and give them feedback in a really simple, easy way. I can just type a comment, and all our parents are linked to their student Seesaw account, so it's all a shared platform. But that's been the biggie. I did share with my team that I was presenting tonight, and what they wanted to get across is that it's kind of ebbed and flowed. We found that some weeks we need a lot more community time, and the kids just need to see each other and hear each other. And other weeks they're more open to, okay, I'm ready to dig into this content of writing or math. So every week it's been a little bit different, but it's been fabulous, and they're courageous learners. They've been really pushing themselves, so it's all good.
So I just want to say thank you to Katie and to Kara. Your work is just incredible. It's intentional, it's student-centered, it's about continuing our learning in a new platform. And what you came up with was so organized and just incredible. And what I love is that you're basing it on community and relationships, because relationships are key. And I know that you represent all of our teachers who are doing amazing things in our classrooms. And we want to say thank you for the time and energy that you put into this report. It just is wonderful. I want to say thank you to all the teachers at Glenridge and throughout our district for the work that they're doing. So thanks for representing our teachers, and happy Teacher Appreciation Week.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask Robin to come up really quickly to talk a little bit about some other important people that we're celebrating next week, and that is our school nurses.
All right. Oh, asking me to start my video. All right. Good evening, everybody. Well, it's a great privilege to recognize a really special team of people in our school district. I wanted to take a moment to recognize our team of district nurses in honor of next week's National Nurses Week, led by our nurse coordinator, Heather Chrisman, who's based out of Glenridge, Karen Etling at Merrimack, Gail Filarski at Captain, Mary Frances McCarty at Wydown, Lisa McDade at CHS, and Jody Tonchek, our part-time nurse. They see on average 150 students a day in our clinics across the district. So our nurses play a lot of roles in our students' daily school experience, above and beyond handing out ice packs and bandages. They're often a great source of encouragement on a really tough day. They're also a calming spirit when our students' nerves get in the way of confidence, and they are some of the greatest cheerleaders when our students hit milestones. And so we're so grateful for all their efforts to ensure our students and staff are safe and healthy. We're also really grateful for their willingness to further the future of the profession by hosting nursing students from St. Louis University. I also wanted to highlight that Nurse Heather was recently nominated as one of the top nurses in the region by St. Louis Magazine's Excellence in Nursing Awards. The recognition is presented by BJC Healthcare and the Goldfarb School of Nursing at Barnes Jewish College. And the program honors nurses who have consistently exhibited selfless care, compassion, and service. So at this point, I believe Nurse Heather is with us virtually, and I wanted to invite her to say a few words about our health services team.
Hi, everyone. Sorry if my dog barks in the background. I first want to say I am completely honored to be recognized by St. Louis Magazine. It's a great privilege. I also want to say I'm very fortunate to work in a district that we have a nurse in each building. Taking the lead nurse position this year, I've been to a lot of meetings, and it's really nice to work in a district that you're recognized and you have a lot of help for. We're currently working on some policies and procedures and making sure everything is up to date if we need to change things. Working on immunizations for next year for students. And we've also done a lot of connections with families right now with COVID. In Glenridge, I am proud to say that we've written a note to every student in the building. I'm still working on doing birthday cards for our students that are still getting them for the rest of this year. I stopped in with a family that the mom asked me to stop by and check in with her student because she extremely missed me. Mom was afraid she was going to run down the steps and give me a hug, but she didn't. So since that happened this week, I've offered it up to a few of my other families. And so next week, I'm going to be doing a few more standing at the street and saying hi to some of the students, because that sounds to be like one of the things that they're kind of missing and wanting. I just want to say thank you for all your support. And please, if you guys have any questions or anything, just come and ask.
Thank you so much, Heather. And I will tell you that we have been so appreciative of your work and over the last 2 months, because we have needed you as a resource with everything that's happened, and you have been amazing and a calm force across of the other nurses. So thank you so much. So Board of Education, on behalf of the Board of Education and the administration, we want to say thank you to our teachers. Thank you so much to our nurses. We truly appreciate you and all that you're doing, especially in these unusual circumstances. So we really appreciate you. And Board of Education, we probably will be asking you next week to help us with a secret project that we are working on for Teacher Appreciation Week, as well as Nurses Appreciation. So thank you. So we are now going to, Joe, go to public comment.
Yep.
So I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yeah, so actually, yeah, so we're going to go to public comment, but I just want to offer my thanks too. We're so lucky as a district to have awesome teachers. So, thank you, Katie. Thank you, Kara. Awesome nurses, awesome staff. So we're really blessed, and we really appreciate great presentations. We appreciate all of you. So we are going to move to public comments, and I think like we did last time, we are going to ask Chris to read them. People submitted them, and Chris, you're going to read them, right?
Absolutely. Thank you, Joe. We had 2 public comments submitted from or submitted prior to the meeting tonight. The first one is from Elizabeth Macanufo, and her comment reads, although this has been a challenging time, I hope that the district and community will use this time to reflect on possible lessons learned and even positive outcomes from this experience. For instance, my children have expressed relief at having more time to eat lunch, as well as the ability to pursue interests on their own timeline and to go deeper into subjects that pique their curiosity. In addition, I hope that the district would reevaluate before and after school expectations and events to encourage more family time together. While these offerings are beneficial, I believe that we, as a community, could support fewer activities and more downtime for both kids and parents to reconnect. Finally, a huge thank you to all of the district teachers and administrators for supporting our children at this time. And our second and final comment tonight is from Kimberly Hurst. Her comment reads, we've been impressed by how the district has responded to the challenge of distance learning and amazed by many individual teacher efforts. We're certain that no matter what the future holds, teacher stock has gone up big time. No one should ever take a teacher for granted again. They are rock stars. And that is it for our public comment this evening.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks to Chris for reading those public comments. So we're going to move next to Superintendent Communication. Sean.
Thank you. And so as part of my Superintendent Communications, I want to do similar to what I did last time, as a brief update about what's happening now and how we're planning for the future. But again, I just want to echo what I share, what's been said, is that the work that we're doing right now is because we have such quality people doing the work, and our teachers and staff have been incredible. I was speaking to a parent yesterday, and she said, she was talking about how she really appreciates, she now has a greater appreciation for what happens in our classrooms as she's been working with her children at home. So I think that a lot of people feel that way. So what I want to do is talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going next. And so we started our continued learning on March 25th. That's a little over a month ago. And when we first started, we really were trying to get into a routine and thinking about reviewing content. Again, I really think that us being very proactive about this situation allowed us to get started very quickly after spring break. And you can see that the detail that our teachers are putting into this continued learning and into this distance learning is incredible. On April 9th, we made the collective decision across St. Louis County and City with other superintendents to close our school buildings. And I'm intentional about saying school buildings because our district is not closed. We are continuing to teach every single day, and we're not stopping the learning in our district. On that same day, April 9th, our Governor Parson decided to put out an order for closing schools across the state, so it aligned. Since that time, we've been teaching new content. We established a new grading system that I believe takes into consideration the work that the students have already completed, but also holding our students accountable to a fair expectation for their work during the fourth quarter. We've also worked on some new reporting systems for Wydown and the elementary schools for report cards, because they're going to be a little different. And although that we started with an asynchronous approach, which was very intentional on our part, we have asked teachers to be thoughtful about providing opportunities for connections and building relationships with our students. And so giving opportunities for the students to be able to see their teachers, for them to actually teach lessons, and and actually have time for the students to interact with one another. As you can see, our teachers have done that as well. We've also, we have used Google Meet for our students to be able to interact with one another. And some of us might say, you know, why aren't we using Zoom, and why instead of a Google Meet? So we use Google Meet in our classrooms because that's part of our platform and it works just as well as Zoom. The reason why we do Zoom for these meetings is because we want to live stream them, and it goes outside of our network when we're able to use Zoom. So if it wasn't for that one thing about live streaming, we would still be using Google Meet. We have continued to provide meals for our families on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And we have continued to have deliveries of food for those families that have used our food banks. Our Clayton Education Foundation raised about $25,000, and they have been able to provide gift cards to families throughout our district, which is incredible. And they have continued to do that and use those funds. Our counselors and our social workers have helped families that are who are in need beyond academics. Our interns, our educational interns, have been working with individual families and students who may not have as much support at home, who may have parents that are still working. And so they have been providing individual support to students who are needing someone just to help guide them through the work. Our Kids Zone staff for after school program have been providing enrichment videos and have been continuing to do connections with our students through that. As you know, we're not going to have spring sports, but we are thinking about ways that we can allow our senior athletes to have some type of connection, get on the field maybe during the summer. We don't know what that's going to look like. Graduation has been postponed until July, but we are thinking about some creative ways, and I'm not going to talk about right now, of celebrating our students, our seniors, and I'm really excited about those. This week, we filmed the award ceremony at the high school, so that way our students are still going to have an award ceremony. We have canceled our Summer Quest programs in the Family Center camp over the summer, and we've modified what we're doing for summer academies. We're still going to continue in June with our summer academy for the high school, but have gone completely virtual on that. And then we are going to do jump starts for our Wydown and for our elementary. And we're still considering to do virtual in case we're not able to do that. I have been meeting weekly with superintendents across the region. And today I joined a group of superintendents that are actually across the country and into Canada, and just problem solving and brainstorming with one another virtually. That allows us to brainstorm ideas for next year. And that's where we're now putting a lot of our energy. We want to be as proactive as we were for this situation. We want to be as proactive for the fall. And I think it's going to be really important to emphasize that we are going to do school differently when we return. And we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But even if our ultimate goal is to get the students back in our schools. But no matter if we get them back in the schools, it's probably going to look a little different. And so we're talking a lot about the what ifs in that situation. I want to open our schools with hope rather than fear. And so we need to be proactive in order to think about what that's going to look like, so our families feel confident about whatever plans we're putting in place. And we're thinking of different scenarios that are causing us to be very creative and might be a little unorthodox. Some people might think about that, but right now we have to think that way in order to do what's best for our students and to get them back in school. And then, just so you know, we're continuing to do the other work too, like continuing to work on our action steps for our strategic plan. But one of the modifications as part of our action steps is that we're gonna have to put energy into whatever we're doing for our at the beginning of next year. And so we are gonna probably have like a little addendum to that strategic plan that's connected to what's happening with our continued learning. We are going to get some feedback from our community and sending out a survey or a thought exchange in the near future, so that way we can hear from them, and that would be some data to inform how we move forward. And we are continued to have timely communication, so our parents feel like they're informed of what's happening in the district and feel like they are staying connected. As I said before, I feel like we will become stronger because of this experience. And we are gonna, like similar to what someone said in the comments, we are going to look at what are the positives that we can gain from this situation. And I think that we will be stronger. So we don't normally have questions for the board during superintendent communications, but since this is a little different, I was gonna see if the board had any questions pertaining to anything that I shared with you.
Maybe what we'll do is just go around the horn, because otherwise it might get a little mayhem. So Adam, do you have any questions?
No.
Stacy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Jason, any questions? Amy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Kristen, any questions? Okay. Lily, any questions?
Nope, thank you.
Okay. Gary, any questions?
Well, now I feel like I'm gonna stick out a little bit because I did have a question. But thanks, guys. Sean, I wanted to kind of follow up on what you said about, well, I guess first it's more of a comment, then follow up with a question about thinking about how we know that school is going to be different in the fall, regardless of a lot of things we don't know. We know it's going to look different. And I think that's something that I've been thinking a lot about, a lot of different contexts. But are there any examples of things that you can talk about that are maybe possibilities for that, or are things that you're thinking about that we can, while we may have buildings open in some way, things that we're thinking about whether they're going to be different or there's going to be a different approach. I just, not to put you on the spot, I'm just sort of curious about that concept. Yeah.
So ultimately, we have to go by what guidance we're getting to from the Department of Health. And so if there's not as many restrictions, I still think that we might have to put some different behavioral or structural types of systems in place in terms of education around hand washing. It may be that we have some different procedures about people coming into the buildings, assemblies. We may have to put some different type of practices in place if we don't have like social distancing guidelines. If we have social distancing guidelines and we can only have small groups of students in our classrooms at a time, I mean, I'm not married to any of these ideas I'm sharing with you, but we may have to think about, like, what if we had a different schedule for the day, where we might have one day is one group of students, the next day is another group of students, and then they do continued learning at home the next day, half days for students. So we have smaller groups of students. Our ultimate goal is to get the students back into the buildings, and we will work around those guidelines. But we know that it might look a little different. When I was talking with one of the superintendents in the meeting I had today, they're thinking of like plans where they have groups of students in for 2 weeks, and then they have another group of students in for 2 weeks. And the most important priority we're thinking about is, how do we get our youngest students back into the schools? Because they're the ones that will need the most supervision, and they will also need the most guidance with their learning. And so we've been trying to be thoughtful about making sure that that's a priority. So those are just a few examples. And just to give you an idea that there could be engineering types of things that we have to look at. Like, do we need to think about, like plexiglass or things like that become barriers in our schools? So those are the kinds of things that we're thinking about now. And we want to make sure that we have a solid plan, so that way everyone knows that. But those plans can change based off guidance or what's happening in the community at the time. Does that help?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I know we don't, it's hard to be sort of talk about it in hypotheticals, but just wondered about what some of the areas that you were thinking about were. It's a great challenge to even kind of imagine what some of the possibilities are. So I appreciate that.
We will be up
Joe,
for
may
it.
Sorry, may I ask a question just actually prompted? Okay. Yep. From the little I know about kind of how virtual learning and some of these changes might impact. I'm hearing like that we're most concerned about the kids that were already struggling, and or, you know, I think about the kids that, you know, maybe have homes where they're not as comfortable kind of being in their home to learn or sharing their home with other kids. Have we noticed and accommodated or made any special arrangements to make sure we're reaching the kids that might have been struggling already and or might not have some of the same benefits of kind of a learning environment at home?
So yes, I think that one of the things we did was we sent out the needs survey. But the other thing too is our teachers know our students, and they might adjust the amount of time that they're spending with certain students during their time of continued learning to give them additional support. As I mentioned, that we are looking at our staffing too. So like there might be some students who may not have as much support at home. So we're looking at maybe those ancillary positions that we have that are connecting in with students that need that support and who were struggling before this all happened, and they're able to give them, you know, work with them at the continued learning platform. The other thing too is that we also still have our reading specialists and our math specialists, and those people still working with our students. And so, yes, I will say it's not the same as it would be if they were in school, but we are cognizant of those students that were struggling before this and continuing to see what we can do to support them. And I think that that's also, we have to be thoughtful about what does that look like in the fall when we come back, and are there any other strategies that we need to put in place? But also, most of those students that might be deemed that they were struggling before will probably be they've probably already been recommended for our summer academies. And so those summer academies will also be a jumpstart to the school year as well. But we are cognizant of that.
Thank you, Sean. We appreciate your update. We're going to move on to student rep. Adam, do you have anything, any updates you want to give us?
Yeah, sure. So the other day I was driving with my mom up to Adzik Field to check it out because now that it's finally done, we don't get to use it, and I just wanted to see it. And I got in contact with Dr. Doherty, and I said, if you want to come have a little chat outside, I'd love to see you. And so we were outside talking, and one of the things he asked me was, what have you been doing to stay talking to your friends, and what have you been doing socially? And so I talked to a few students. I talked to a first grader, a seventh grader, and a junior, and I asked them all what they've been doing to stay involved with their classmates and socially and with their family. So first I asked my next door neighbor, Fabi Jimenez, and she talked about, and I'm just picking out the highlights that they told me, she did a friend's birthday party by honking in a car. So they all drove by and they were honking and they got little goodie bags. She's also been writing letters to friends, which is something she says she normally doesn't get to do, but that's been fun. And with her family, she's been watching movies, Star Wars, going on bike rides, and practicing gymnastics a lot, cartwheels specifically. And I also talked to Molly Seawalk, who's a seventh grader. I don't think Stacy knows this. And so Molly talked about how with her friends, she's been texting, Snapchatting, and using FaceTime. She says not in groups though, because it gets too chaotic, only one-on-one FaceTimes. And something with family that I thought was neat that also applies to me is Zoom Passover. And so we did that. We were actually in a Zoom Passover with the Seawalks for one of them, but that's something that I know a lot of our Jewish students have been doing and were able to do together and with their family. The Seawalks also went and visited with their grandparents outside, which I thought was really awesome, and some cousins. And then I talked to Nile Hopper, who's another junior classmate of mine, and she talked about how with her friends, she's been sending a lot of memes back and forth, a lot about Corona memes. And with her family, they've been getting to eat together more, which I thought was really a great thing, because I know that for us, that's been something that's kept me going and helped a lot. And she also talked about playing categories with her family. And I thought that those were all great things and ways that they've been staying involved socially. And for me, it's been a lot of Xbox and talking to my friends on Xbox. That's how we've been staying in contact. And my family's been playing a lot of Rummy Cube. And I just thought it was important that we focus on some of the positives too. And so I asked everyone what did they think were some positives that they've been getting out of having learning online. One of them they said was taking ownership over learning, and that you have the ability to do it on your own time, which I think is amazing and so true. Also talking about effectively emailing people and learning how to be an effective communicator online, which is really important, not only now, but all the time. And as we grow as a 21st century learner. And also the last two were time management and focusing on mental wellness, which I thought were both really important and great silver linings in what's going on. And then lastly, I wanted to, like Dr. Doherty, I wanted to ask you if you had any questions for me as a student and what my learning has been looking like. I have, if you'd like me to show you Google Classroom, I can show you what a high school Google Classroom would look like and an example of that. But if you have any questions, I just wanted to see, let me know, and I'd be happy to answer it from a student's perspective.
Stacy, any questions?
No, thanks. Thanks, Adam.
Lily, any questions?
Thanks, Adam.
Kristen, questions?
Thank you, Adam, for sharing and for reaching out to your fellow classmates and peers. That's great.
Amy, questions?
No, thank you.
Jason, any questions?
Nope.
Lily?
No, thanks for sharing with us, Adam. It's great.
Cool. Thanks, everyone.
Adam, I thought you were going to tell us that you've read all those books in your background.
No. I wish.
That's awesome. Thank you. So we're going to move on now to study items. And I've got good news for you guys. We only have 13 of them tonight. So I don't think all of them are going to take a long time. But we are going to start with the first one is staffing requests. So Sean, who is that one?
So I've asked Tony Arnold to come forward with the staffing request, and he's going to give you a little bit of an overview. Again, this is an opportunity for the board to hear our staffing request. It's not a vote tonight, but I think Tony's done a nice job of organizing the request. So I'm going to turn it over to Tony. You're on mute. You're muted, Tony. There you go.
Is that better? Can you hear me now? Good evening, everyone. So tonight I'm going to be coming to the board regarding our staffing needs for the upcoming year. Each year we have several meetings with building administrators to review our staffing requests. And as we look at the various requests, we deeply analyze them by reviewing the enrollment numbers, determining the best ways to support student learning and other specific needs to make our recommendations that we believe are essential. So while we had to prioritize staffing requests and also deny several, we feel strongly that the ones being presented tonight are necessary. So this year we do have a very different set of recommendations from previous years, and this is really due to our large incoming freshman class for 2020-2021. The upcoming class will be our largest group of freshmen in history at Clayton High School, and also make enrollment at the high school the highest that it's ever been. So we're recommending an increase for a full-time English teacher. This would be to accommodate the large freshman class that we just talked about. English is kind of unique compared to the other subjects because there are more choices and it doesn't necessarily increase the staffing needs in other courses. However, English is a required course for freshmen, and with our rigorous conferencing program, this recommendation is necessary. Next, in orchestra, we're requesting an increase of a 0.35 FTE to a current staff member. This would be due to increased enrollment and also to the addition of the chamber orchestra course at Wydown. We believe the chamber orchestra course is necessary. The School District of Clayton values our fine arts program, and we have the enrollment numbers to justify the recommendation. Next, in social studies, we're recommending an additional 0.4 FTE. Similar to what I shared with the recommendation for English, our incoming freshman class will significantly impact yet another required course of social studies, which creates the need for additional sections being offered to our students. With this particular request, we'll be able to continue with our co-teaching model that is currently in place at the high school. This model helps ensure detracking, additional one-to-one instruction, and differentiation for all students. And the maintenance of the detracking is supported by best practice and supports our equity work at the classroom level. So several years ago, The district had to make a difficult decision to reduce the choir position with the goal of growing the program and bringing the position eventually back to a 1.0 FTE. And our choir program at Clayton High School is continuing to grow. We want to celebrate that growth. In order to accommodate the increased request of students wanting to take classes, we will need to offer 4 full-year courses next year instead of 3 courses. So our recommendation is to increase the choir teacher by 0.3 FTE. We wanted to share also that since enrollment in Chinese has decreased, we're making the recommendation to decrease the position by 0.17 FTE. This will be a reduction to the budget, but I wanted to share the information to show that we're being cognizant of our staffing requests. We're making hard decisions by reducing positions and really only asking for what we believe to be essential to accommodate our student enrollment. So with all the recommendations, of course, we'll reevaluate annually, reviewing our enrollment and other needs, and really take a close look to determine if the allocation remains in need. Overall, with the recommendations, it would be approximately a 0.8% increase to our salary schedule. Do you have any questions or any comments at this time?
Thank you, Tony. We're just gonna go around again. So Stacy, any questions?
I do have a question. Thank you, Tony. So like you mentioned that this incoming 9th grade class at the high school will be the largest one, which then makes the high school population the largest we've had. I'm just wondering if you're considering any, or if you anticipate any further staffing requests to accommodate not just freshman classes, but because the overall population of the high school will grow, that will affect all kinds of electives and specialists and other kind of staffing needs. So I'm just wondering if you're anticipating more of that to accommodate the large number of kids that we'll have.
For 2021, I don't think that we're going to have more at the high school based on the enrollment. That will probably be more of a constant need. So like the following year, we'll probably need to maintain that. So I don't see it as a one-year fix. Like sometimes at the elementary, if you have a bubble of population that's 4th or 5th grade, that'll be a sort of a short term at the elementary. But we do see this as the long term. But as of now, for 2021, this is what we're bringing forward to our staffing needs.
Okay, thanks.
Jason, any questions?
No, I think the questions I would have would be the adjustment for what's happening now, for what might happen in the fall. But I think only time will tell, so we'll just wait and see what happens.
Great, thank you. Amy, questions?
No, thank you for the report.
Thank you. Kristen, questions?
Push on the wrong button. Thank you, Tony. That is, it's really great to see that you're being responsive to the needs and the current realities, and that you're also being thoughtful about reducing where we do have reductions instead of just holding on to teachers thinking that it might change. So I appreciate that deliberate decision making on that. And I was thinking the same lines Jason was, and I'm thinking that if there is this back and forth with online learning versus in classroom learning, that we may need to maintain the numbers of teachers that we currently have. But I don't know if that's been, I'm assuming that's been part of your conversations. I was just curious if it has been.
Yes, and those conversations continue to evolve. It just it's the unknown of what might happen in the fall, but I think we can be creative, and we'll have to just sort of monitor the situation as we have more information throughout the spring and early summer.
Thank you. Lily, questions?
Yeah, my question is along the same lines as what Jason and Kristen brought up. I guess, is there any other way that you haven't spoken about where the COVID crisis has impacted your thinking at all, or made you kind of pull back and say, let's not do this one right now, or we still need to do that? I guess I'm just wondering about how it impacts, because there really is so much unknown about what school and other places are going to look like.
Right, and that COVID-19, all of this is part of our regular conversations that we're having at least twice a week as a group of administrators and really just looking at our planning for the fall. So we really are at the preliminary stages of what it might look like, different versions of what that might look like. So I do feel with what we're bringing forth tonight for our staffing request, our essential requests that we have at this time to be able to maintain the quality education program, whether it's virtual learning or having students physically coming into the building. I do feel like this is what we're going to absolutely need to make that happen.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
Yeah, thanks, Tony. I wanted to ask about one thing that you mentioned with the, I think it was with the social studies teacher, you used the term detracking, allows us to kind of detrack, I think, not detract, but detrack, I think, and how that impacts our equity work. I mean, could you just maybe just so that we all understand like what that concept is and how you see that connected to the equity work?
Sure. So what we have currently in place at the high school in the co-teaching model is there's 2 teachers in the classroom at the same time. So that allows for more one-on-one differentiation, individual support, meeting students where they are, and not having different levels of different classes. So I don't know if someone else can speak more to that, but that's the part that I know about the co-teaching model. I don't know if Sean.
It also helps contribute to our goal of getting more students in our AP and honors classes. And so the theory is that when we're working with our students at the beginning of when they're coming into freshman and sophomore year, that we will be able, the students will be more prone to taking a AP or honors class in a junior year. And so we have seen some tremendous gains with this, how the teacher's been able to, and it's not every class in social, I want to make sure not every class is doing this. We're really focusing on freshmen. And so it has seen some real positives to it. And we feel like we want to make sure we're continuing that traction of that work. And so in order to do that with the expansion of more students, we needed to have the additional staffing.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Adam, any questions?
No, thanks, Tony.
All right, thank you, Tony. We appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to move to a bevy of policies now, like about 12 of them. So the first one is 6.02 policy FED, selection of construction manager at risk. I assume that's Mary Jo.
Yes.
Yes. Basically, that's just a mandatory state change, and it kind of just aligns with the previous one where we increased the amount for the prevailing wages and for bidding up to the 50,000. This is just a policy I didn't bring forward at that time because we don't have any construction projects as construction manager at risk. So I just didn't bring it forward at that time.
Great, thank you. So again, Stacy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Jason, any questions?
No.
Amy, questions?
No, thank you.
Kristen, any questions?
No.
Lily, any questions?
Nope.
Gary, any questions? Adam, any questions?
Nope.
All right, thank you, Mary Jo, appreciate it. So the next one is 6.03 policy GBCB, which is staff conduct.
And this will be Tony.
So good evening again. So this is the first read of each of the policies that I'm presenting this evening. The first one is policy GBCB, staff conduct. So MSBA has updated the policy to reflect the new changes brought by Senate Bill 1007, known as the whistleblower law, and to clarify some policy language. In addition to the changes proposed with the policy update, I did have one more suggested change that should have been updated on your electronic copy. In consulting with our attorney, we would like to propose that item 10 be modified. So it should be highlighted in your version, your electronic version, after the last sentence, employees must not leave students unsupervised except as necessary to handle an emergency situation. We added on, however, this requirement shall not apply to the supervision of high school students while they are away from the premises during the school day for non-school related purposes as authorized by the high school student handbook and related document. This new language really just helps clarify and protect the district with their students having the unique open campus in Clayton. So with that proposal, that would be the only other suggestion that we had for the board to review.
Great, thank you, Tony. So Stacy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Jason, any questions?
Yeah, not necessarily any questions. I was just reading where it says like on page 4 at the bottom, it says leaving work areas. And for some reason, I just thought that it was interesting that it read, a district employee may not leave assigned work areas during normal work hours to discuss district operations or to make protected disclosures under the policy. I guess I wasn't really sure why that was an emphasis, but it might not be a big deal, you know.
I think it's just really making sure that we have, that we're being really clear that the teachers are always supervising students that they're assigned to.
Gotcha. So not okay. I got you. Okay. Yeah. I guess I was. You know how when you're reading this stuff, everything's like line by line, super literal. So okay, I got it.
Awesome, thanks. Amy, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Kristen, any questions?
I just want to say thank you for acknowledging that. That was one of my questions that I had actually sent earlier to Joe and Sean about the high school campus and the uniqueness that we have as a open campus. And I think that wording covers it. So that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
No.
Okay. Adam, any questions?
Just one thing in the first sentence, it says to his or her position. Can we change that to there? And I was going to ask about the high schoolers too. So thanks for the open campus.
Great, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So the next is 6.04 policy GDCBB, protected staff communication.
Correct. So MSBA has written this new policy to reflect the changes brought about by Senate Bill 1007, again known as the whistleblower law, which made significant changes to the ability of public employers, including school districts, to discipline or even prevent public employees, teachers, volunteers, staff members, interns, and any other persons working or providing services to the district from discussing operations of the district or reporting alleged prohibited activity. So essentially the policy states that district administrators may not prohibit an employee from discussing the operations of the district with anyone investigating misconduct listed in policy. So administrators cannot discipline an employee for disclosing information they believe to be in violation of any law. It restricts employees from representing their opinions as those of the district, and it allows employees to be disciplined for reporting false information.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
No, not on this one. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Jason, any questions?
Okay, you know what? My question was actually for GC, for this current one. I think my paperwork was out of order.
That's mine too.
All right, so
A lot of
I
paper.
guess the answer's still the same, so it's all good.
Awesome, thank you. Amy, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Kristen, questions?
No.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
I have just, if there's a brief answer to this, can you, do you happen to know what kind of the backstory is on this? How did this particular policy come about?
Well, it's all regarding Senate Bill 1007. So the whistleblower law has really just changed, just really making sure that people can be transparent and bring forth things that they feel are unfair or unjust and bringing those attention, and not having a district policy that says that they cannot do so. So it's really just making sure that we're being very transparent as a public entity and be able to bring things forward so they can be investigated and not being disciplined for doing so. Does that answer the question, Lily?
I just wondered if there was more to it, like if there had been some incidents or if it was a national kind of thing, or, you know, just wondering. I think it's great, but just wondering.
Gary, any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
No.
Okay. Thank you. So thank you, Tony. We're moving on. You get to continue at 6.05, policy GBEBC, which is criminal background checks.
That's right. So if you recall, I brought the earlier version of this policy to the board in the fall. So I hope that you have the most recent updated version to review this evening. It should be dated 12/19 at the bottom. So because of House Bill 604, we're required to revise our policy to align and ensure our district is in compliance. In regard to volunteers, it's really what we discussed in the fall, ensuring that any screened volunteer, which when we use the term screened volunteer, that means anyone that may be periodically left alone with students or that may have access to student records. So any of those screened volunteers are required to have a full background check conducted. That means fingerprinting, it's everything. So it specifically states that we may accept a background check conducted by another Missouri public school within the past year. And there have been a lot of different messages around in the past 6 months or so. So this is really great clarification for us to have. It also allows the district to require that other volunteers, meaning those who are not considered screened or unsupervised, to undergo a background check, or that the district may conduct a search through the Family Care Safety Registry or the Child Abuse and Neglect databases. And those are things that we currently have in place. So it just allows us that while they don't have to have the full background check, that we can impose other background checks, if you will, screeners on them before they can volunteer or visit in the school, even though they're being supervised with a teacher or employee with them. Additionally, it allows the district to require contractors to have criminal background checks if we so choose, if they're having regular contact with students, which we already have in place as part of our procedures. So really, this really isn't anything new. We're doing all of these things that they're saying. It's just really making sure that we're in line with the new requirements and the new recommendations. So we're recommending the policy this evening the way it's presented.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Jason, any questions?
Yeah, so real quick, so this policy took me on a range of emotions and thoughts, right? And so when we started using this policy in 2017, is that when it started? Like we started using RAP back in 2017?
I believe so. I'd have to look into that specific year, but
right.
That sounds right.
So some things that stuck out to me, right? So on the first page, I thought about like it says so on the second paragraph, third to last sentence, it says, however, not all arrests lead to charges or convictions, so districts should be cautious about how this information is used. I thought about how it's not accurate, how it's subjective, about misuse, and privacy, accuracy, security. I just thought about it could really ruin someone's life. This RAP Act, because it's to me it's so open. It gives the FBI and gives the whomever so much autonomy to do whatever they want with private information. Constantly checking on someone to see if they're, if they violated the law. And then if you go to page 2, well, not necessarily page 2, it's actually called page 3. It talked about driving records and getting tickets, for example. And that also is something that can pop up on someone's radar.
Mm-hmm.
And could possibly get them fired, or one could start building a case against somebody if they wanted to. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but we live in a world that we do stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? People do. And then I went on to say, I think it's the same thing. Yeah, GBE. Yeah, so it's the same thing. I'm on page 4 now. It says payment, and it's paragraph. You know what I'm talking about? Are you familiar with where I am, everybody?
Where are you exactly on page 4?
Where it says payment, I'm on like the second sentence. And it says, well, actually, it's the first sentence. It says, I'll read the whole sentence so you all get the context. But it says, in general, applicants for employment and volunteers are responsible for the cost of the criminal background check. But the district may not, may later reimburse the person at the district's discretion. I'm thinking maybe that should be more definitive. Like, are we going to reimburse? Are we not going to reimburse? Like, you know, that kind of language right there is so broad. It just puts us in a position where we have to argue or debate somebody about, you know what I'm saying? Reimbursement. That makes sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
I mean, this is just, you know,
So,
reading through it.
So the current practice has been that for employment, the applicants do pay for their own background check, and that's pretty standard and pretty typical. So that wouldn't be anything new. But yes, we can look into that language.
Well, I thought I read later on down the line in a couple. I haven't marked this yet, but later on down the line, a couple of different policies. It talks about where the school district actually pays for these background checks.
The school district pays for the background. So the school district pays for the other level of background checks for like the family care safety registry and the child abuse and neglect database search. So we often refer to that as the name search. So those the district does, we do pay for those. And we've been paying for the OASIS tutors because they have to get the full background check, meaning the fingerprinting, and they get everything, and we pay for those.
All right, so I think the overall point about this policy, which concerns me, is that the FBI has this file, right? That the state and federal government have a file on someone, and it just seems it could be a detriment to someone's life, even if these are mild cases of things that are happening, and they're constantly checking your background. They have access to this. You know, a case can be filed, can be built against somebody, and the information can be misused, and that just concerns me. And my other question is this something that we have to accept? Do we have to accept this policy? We have to accept the rap back. It sounds kind of weird. I almost want to say rap black, but I had to look it up and make sure I understood what rap back meant. But the policy just seems a little bit odd to me. I want to make sure that we have to accept that policy. Do we want to continuously? I mean, I know we want to protect ourselves against, you know, someone who could possibly be doing a crime. But then again, there's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff that we just don't know. They're just not getting caught. So I want to make sure this is a fair process to teachers, to administrators, to whomever.
Right. Yeah, I understand your concern. I think, you know, we would be negligent if we did not follow this policy as presented. I understand what you're saying regarding to privacy and things like that. So when we do have things that do pop up, either on, let's say, an employee or a volunteer, those are handled with as a strictly confidential issue, and we address those on a case-by-case basis. Typically, they're minor things that are on there. If there was something that was more serious, I know that you had mentioned like maybe like tickets and things like that with the driving. It's usually like reckless driving. It's usually things that are not misdemeanors. It would be more like arrests. So it's not just
Right.
for a speeding ticket. Those things do not come back on a wrap back or show up on the criminal history report.
What about issues of domestic violence where there isn't, where like, I think our state is where like if a police officer is called, I think the male ends up going to jail no matter what, right?
Yeah, if someone is arrested, then it shows up on the report.
Right. So even so, in a situation like that where it's a dispute of battery, you know, or and it wasn't even what was written in the report and what actually happened isn't what the report isn't indicative of what happened, for example. But now that person has it on the report. It just seems to me it's just a little bit. I'm concerned. I'm not saying I'm in a position like that, but I know there are people out here in this world that may even work for the school system that have issues where things happen and it can totally be misconstrued. And it's on that report. And now, as a decider, someone who makes a decision about employment, I have a biased perspective towards that person. Something happens, I mean, immediately think, yeah, I remember that on the report. I knew that could happen to them. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about stuff like that. But I digress.
So all of our applicants are required to disclose that information as they're applying on the application. So typically when we do get a report back, it's something that we're already aware of because the applicant has already disclosed that information. If they did not disclose it or it does not match, they're not disqualified because of that. What we do is we invite them in and we go through a form so we can go through and give them the opportunity to either explain the arrest or defend what happened. We've had situations where there have been false arrests, or we look at the severity of it. And if we feel like it's, happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, and we have a whole checklist that we go through that we determine if this is a person that we should move forward with, or if this is something that we feel would not be an appropriate decision to be working with children. So I trust me, we go through it very carefully and with a lot of detail and with a lot of care.
So I want to make sure you advocate that we do need to accept this policy.
I do. I think we would be negligent if we didn't, because things could happen, and if we did not do this, we would not be in compliance with the law, and I think that it could cause a lot of problems.
Good.
Okay, thank you. Amy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Kristen, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
No, sorry.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, I didn't have some questions about this too, and I know we've talked about this one before. So I hope that I'm not asking some of the same questions because that'd be embarrassing. But Tony, I wondered if you could help me because there are some things that were a little bit confusing to me in terms of the timing of some of these things, and it may be related to what you were talking about in terms of the name check, what we commonly call a name check versus a full criminal background check. But under the first mention on page 4 of volunteers having a background check, the second paragraph of that section says that the background checks will be updated each year for all volunteers. And then on the next page, on page 5, under like the second paragraph on that page, it says that the district may update all criminal background checks required under this policy at least every 5 years. So are those different checks we're talking about there? Is that why it's a different time, or is that just an inconsistency? I was just a little bit confused about that.
Sure. So once the fingerprinting, the fingerprint background check is in the system, if you're part of RATBAC, which our district is, that's good for 5 years. So any arrest that may happen within the 5 years of the time the fingerprinting was conducted, then all of that information comes back in a report automatically to the Human Resources Office. So that's what the every 5 years is that the subscription's good for 5 years. And what the policy allows us to do is to go back in and then renew that again if we wanted to for an additional 5 years. And to keep that,
Okay.
that subscription going for the ongoing records. The other one about the annual is the non-fingerprinting background checks. So the name search, if you will. So when it goes to the family care registry, the sex offender, all of that information needs to be done annually.
Okay, that makes sense. And I realize this is MSBA's writing and not yours, so I'm not criticizing your own choice of words there, but I think it might make sense to maybe clarify that wording, because they're basically using background checks, same phrase, to mean two different things, to me anyway. And maybe I'm just not, it's just a different enough subject that I wasn't used to the way it was used, but I thought that was a little bit confusing and that it seemed inconsistent when I read it the first time. And then, so with respect to the first one, where it says that we will update those each year, do we in fact actually, as a matter of practice, do that every year? Is that consistent with our practice?
Yes, with our volunteers, we do. If they're
okay.
Yep.
I think the other stuff we've covered. So, but yeah, just I would give that some thought as to whether there's a way to clarify that, or if you read it again and think, well, this actually makes sense, you just didn't read it carefully enough, I can accept that point
Okay.
as well. But those are my thoughts.
Thanks,
All right,
Gary.
thank
Adam, any questions?
Yeah, I wanted to go back. Jason, I'm glad that you pointed out the payment. It's on page 4. I'm just wondering, as you know, as we focus on equity as a district, I'm just wondering if it's fair that only applicants that can afford the background check are able to be reviewed. And I know that you said it's common practice, but you know, general practice. But as we talk about, you know, going from excellent to transformational, I don't know if that's something that we could cover, because I think that as a focus of equity, I think that would reflect well in the district.
Okay.
Just something to wonder about. Thanks.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Tony. So we're moving on to 6.06.
Hey, Joe.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just was thinking about one other thing that I didn't write down when I had this thought. But is it correct that when we use the term volunteer in these policies, does that include, like, if a parent is going on a trip or something like that? How does that actually, does that fall under this definition? Is that what we're talking about?
So yes and no, it kind of depends. So you can have two different types of volunteer. When they talk about the screened volunteer, that's what we talk about with the volunteers that could be left alone. They're the ones who are going to have to get the fingerprints done and the other searches, the name search, if you will. So if it's an overnight field trip, absolutely. Depending on how the teacher structures the field trip. So if the teacher has a parent volunteer in charge of a group of students and they go off away from the teacher for the field trip and then meet back up at the end of the day, that person would have to have fingerprinting done. If I'm going in, if you're a volunteer and you're going in to be a guest speaker or to read to your child's class, there to help with reading inside the classroom, but you're not left alone with students, or maybe left alone with students, then you just need the regular background check done, not the screened. So we're going to clarify some of that language too with the change of this law with their volunteer process too, so we can really streamline that so they understand which category they need to fall in based on what they want to do.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So 6.06 policy GBLB references.
Okay, so MSBA has revised this policy to comply also with House Bill 604. MSBA has made some changes to the policy to simplify and clarify it. Please note that the policy previously addressed only references given by the district, but now it also addresses references requested by the district. So under this revised policy, the district is now required to contact DESE to determine the most recent public school district or charter school that that employed the applicant. So we are then required to get a clearance from at least the most previous school district on the candidate's performance. So that's been good practice. We've always contacted and followed up with the references, but now you have to contact DESE to ensure that the applicant has not maybe left out a previous, their most recent school district. In addition, information on any allegations of sexual misconduct involving the applicant must be asked of the former district and disclosed. So in the past few months, nearly all of St. Louis County Public Schools are using a standardized form to request this information regarding allegations of sexual misconduct before formally making an offer to a teacher. So again, the district is currently following the new guidelines that are required and recommend that we move forward with the policy as presented.
All right, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
I do. How do we handle this if an employee is coming from or going to a private school?
So everything would be essentially the same. We would still go ahead, and what we've done, we've had that happen already this year, and it's best practice. We're going ahead and we do contact DESE just to see if there have been other districts that they worked at that have been public schools in Missouri. And then we contact the private school and we go ahead and have them sign off in the same form that we would be required to do with the public school. We currently have a situation with the teacher that's an applicant that's out of the country, and we followed the same policy, the same procedure, basically.
Okay, thanks. I guess, is it worth adding that to the policy that because everywhere it just says public schools and charter schools, or in your opinion, no?
Yeah, I can look at that verbiage and get back with you on that.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jason, any questions?
Yeah, just to pick up where Stacy left off, it did mention private school like in the latter part of the policy, but the question is do private schools have different agreements with teachers when it comes to private information? Can they withhold? Are they subjected to the same rules that public schools are subjected to when it comes to administering information about teachers? Can a private school withhold information if they wanted to?
Yeah, the private schools would not have the same policy necessarily in place. I don't know.
So they could.
I don't know if withholding that would be legal if they knowingly had that information and did not share it if we're asking them, but they would not have the same exact policies in place as a public school district would.
So we need to be careful about that, about the public school, private school, a teacher coming from a private school and being so excited to hire them because they came from John Burroughs, and we may not know that they have some previous or prior, offense with the child. So they may not be disclosed. All right, so that's one. The other thing is I noticed that it talks about, so on page 1 of the policy at the bottom, it says knowingly exposes his or her genitals to a child less than 15 years of age or under. So it seems like that seems to be the consistent theme, that if you're 15 years of age or younger and you expose yourself, there's a problem. But if you're 16 or older, it's okay. It's okay to expose your genitals to a 16-year-old. Is that what this is saying?
I don't think they're saying at all that it's okay. I think that it's a Class C felony with that age of a minor.
Okay, because we need to be careful about that. I think, and okay, so that may be the case. It just reads differently in the policy. It just reads that if it's 15 or younger, we got a problem. But if you're 16, it's okay. Like it's frowned upon, but and that goes on to item 1 on the bottom of page 1, to item 2 at the top of page 2, to item 3, so on and so forth. 15-year-old needs to be is the age. It's kind of it leaves the 16, the 17-year-old, the 18-year-old who's in high school slightly unprotected. So is it a felony to to expose yourself, your genitals as an adult to a 16-year-old? Is it a felony?
I would have to look into it. My assumption would be that it's a felony, but this is a Class E felony. So I think it's just a different category and how we have to respond initially. So these sorts of things happen. Law enforcement is going to be involved as part of the investigation.
Right. If they, okay. Gotcha. Okay. All right. This is just, yeah, I guess this is confusing, but yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Amy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Kristen, any questions?
Nope.
Lily, any questions?
No, but I'm just thinking about what Jason brought up. I wonder if there's some way, because I understand what you're saying, Tony, about it being, you know, certain crimes being classified differently. I wonder if there's some way, I don't know, to footnote it or to, you know, address that it would still be of concern to us, you know, regardless of the age of the child. I don't know, just something to think about. But otherwise, I didn't have anything.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
Nope, thanks.
Gary, any questions?
So Tony, real quick, on the section of this on page 9 where there's a pretty pretty specific section about prohibitions against any employees of the district helping someone who has been accused of this kind of misconduct. And it just made me wonder, again, in practice, like what do we do, or how do we communicate that, or let those employees know? I mean, I have some, I know this is driven by stuff that's out of our control, but we have some, I have some concerns because this kind of takes on any of those district employees' conduct seems to kind of create some liability on our part here. So I think we need to think about, just in practice, how do we manage this? How do we communicate these things with our employees? And really a simple answer, but just some of it jumped out at me as something important to think about as we go through this.
Something that we need to communicate out to our staff. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think, I mean, or in some way communicate to them, because there are some prohibitions that extend to their, you know, each employee's conduct. So I just think we need to think about how we're managing that. So, and that's, yeah, I'll just leave that for you to consider. I think I don't think there's much we can do about the policy language, but that's in practice, I think that's important to consider.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So now we're moving on to 6.07, which is policy GDC, support staff recruiting and hiring.
Okay, so MSBA has updated this policy to clarify that employee transfers and reassignments that change compensation, benefits, or the contract of an employee must be approved by the board. This change is not a result of a new law, but it's based on concerns shared with MSBA that reassignments and transfers may be used to bypass the board's legal role in hiring. So essentially, it now requires board approval when a reassignment results in a change of the employee's compensation, benefits, or contract. It's not new practice for us in Clayton. This is part of how we've been doing things all along. So this really isn't anything new for us. So I suggest that we move forward with the way it's presented.
Great, thanks, Tony. Stacy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Jason, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Amy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Kristen, any questions?
No.
Lily, any questions?
My dog may bark, but I have no questions.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Gary, any questions? Okay, awesome. Thanks, Tony. So now we're moving on to 6.08, which is policy GDI, support staff reassignment and transfer.
Okay, so MSBA has updated this policy to clarify that a reassignment of an employee that changes the compensation, benefits, or contract of the employee must be approved by the board. This change is not a result of a new law, but it's based on concerns shared regarding that the reassignments may be used to bypass the board's legal role in hiring. So again, revised terminology of the policy to better reflect current usage. The way the policy is written, not anything new. We're comfortable with the wording, the way it's presented.
Great, thanks, Tony. Stacy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Jason, any questions?
I don't think so. Nope.
Thank you. Amy, any questions?
No, thanks.
Thanks. Kristen, any questions?
Nothing.
Thanks. Lily, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
Nope. Thanks.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
No.
All right, thanks. All right, Tony, you're having fun with this stuff. 6.09, policy GDPB, support staff resignation.
Got it. Okay, so House Bill 604 has modified the district's obligations to provide information to potential employers regarding former employees who leave the district due to various allegations of sexual misconduct. These obligations are described in detail in policy GBLB. That's the one that I just presented a little bit ago. So disclosing these types of allegations may be stigmatizing. So the district may be required by the Due Process Clause of the United States Constitution to first offer a departing employee a hearing before the board prior to disclosing the information to another party. So that might also address some of the questions I think you had earlier as well, Gary.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
Nope.
Thanks. Jason, any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification. So it says on page 3, it says termination. Last sentence, it talks about giving the employee an opportunity to discuss or rebut the charges. Is that for some reason I didn't read that early on. I didn't think that is even an option.
Wait, can you repeat where that is again, Jason?
So it's page 3 where it says termination, and it's the last sentence, and it says, am I on the right one? Is this GDPE?
No, GDPB.
Yeah, it's 6.09. It's the resignation. Yeah.
We're getting to the termination one here in a minute, which is very similar.
Man, I'm out of order, man.
That's okay.
All right, sorry, man. I think
No problem. Amy, any questions? Okay.
No.
Kristen, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
Yes, I'm sorry about my dog, but I do actually on this one. This is my most involved question or concern. So I see that there would be a board kind of hearing or whatever that would need to happen, and I understand we would then have legal people helping the board out with this. I want to know what kind of so it's more the implementation of this policy rather than the anything written in the policy itself. What kind of training will the board receive in order to engage in that hearing and make a fair and responsible decision? Like, is there training on some of the dynamics behind sexual misconduct or factors associated with it? It just seems like a really big, important, like you said, the stigmatizing piece of it, decision that the board could potentially be involved in, and without some training as to what questions to ask and what to be looking for, I would be really concerned about the fairness of that process.
Right, and we would definitely be working with our attorneys anytime something like this might ever happen, and let's hope it never does. We would definitely involve our attorneys and get their advice along the way to how we would best facilitate this in a fair and consistent manner, so everyone's being treated fairly.
Yeah,
I think Lily, what I'm hearing is something a little different. Like, you are more about the subject matter, and like, I think it's a good question, because I think that there might be some common understanding that we may need to have, or somebody else that might have to come in. It's not about the process for hearing, but having a common understanding
Right.
what we mean about sexual misconduct. Or, I mean, I think that's always the board's purview too, is that if they want additional information, we can provide that training. But I hear what you're saying with that. And we can think about the best way to include
Yeah,
that.
and I'm happy to, provide any input or what, more detailed stuff, but it's not so much the legal as it is, again, knowledge about what would be the right kinds of questions to ask and what various responses and behaviors and history might mean in making a fair determination. And boy, that is just, because, we probably have had situations where this might have come up, had this been already been part of a policy. So it could potentially come up. And I would just think, just even if it's like you have this consultant or this resource out there, if the board were to need to kind of get some background information before engaging in the hearing. So thank you.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
No.
Thanks. And Gary, any questions?
No.
Great. Thanks, Tony. So now we're moving on to 6.10, policy GDPE, which is support staff termination.
Got it. So this next policy really goes hand in hand with the policy that we just presented. Essentially, everything is exactly the same as just presented, with the addition of if the employee violated a board policy and the violation was related to sexual misconduct, that the district may be required by law to conduct a formal board hearing prior to disclosing that information.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
Nope.
Great, thanks. Jason, any questions? I think this was the one you were talking about before. Jason, you're on mute if you're talking.
All right, so it's termination, last paragraph, and for the first, last sentence of the first paragraph. And it says that we are, if you're support staff, you're subject to the same policies, but we're willing to give the support staff an opportunity to discuss or rebut the charges. Is that consistent with how we do things? Or do we give everyone an opportunity to rebut charges of sexual misconduct? Is that how we do it?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so make sure it's clear. All right, that's it.
Well, thank you. Amy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Kristen, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
It's just a repeat of the thing I said on the last policy, but thank you.
Great, thanks. Adam, any questions?
Oh, thanks.
Thanks. Gary, any questions?
No, all set.
Great, thank you. All right, so we're moving on to 6.11, policy JHG, reporting, investigating child abuse.
And this is Robin.
Good evening. So policy JHG for its first read, similar to a lot of the new policies that Tony just discussed, JHG also has some changes related to House Bill 604. And I think the three major things for you to know about this new proposed policy is that it requires board members to receive several hours of training on identifying and danger signs of relationships between children and adults. It also requires school districts to provide trauma-informed, developmentally appropriate training on sex abuse to students in grades 6 through 12. And the details of that education are in policy IGAEB, which the board recently approved. And then House Bill 604 also amends the state child abuse and neglect law, which basically states that school personnel and contractors and volunteers who are adults can be investigated for child abuse if they established a relationship with the child through the school or through a school-related activity, even if the alleged abuse or neglect happened outside of school hours or off school grounds. So this policy updates the definitions based on the changes in that law. I also wanted to note that I had worked on this with our attorney because there was some clarity needed around the policy in its original suggested version in terms of the interpretation of board members' roles as mandated reporting. And so some of that language was struck from the policy based on the attorney's work with MSBA.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
Yeah, I was actually going to ask because between the time we received paper copies and then I saw it electronically, I noticed that board members was struck out of a lot of it, like as a mandated reporter. And so I was just curious if that was something that we chose or MSBA chose. And I wanted to make sure, I guess, everybody saw that, you know, the new version of that electronically, not as the paper versions we got originally.
Yes, thank you, Stacy, for bringing that up. I should have mentioned that at the beginning, that the copy that was initially provided when the policies for study items were sent out in early April, we had not yet received the updates from the attorney's work with MSBA. So the newer version does strike that language because there was some concern about the way MSBA's initial interpretation of board members being considered mandated reporters. There was some concern about that, being that board members are often, you know, community members may share information with them, but at times, particularly in the context of child abuse and neglect, sometimes that information might be third hand. And the things that get set into motion as it relates to mandated reporting could be problematic and have some unproductive outcomes. And so this particular version outlines that mandated reporters are, it lists, you know, school staff, administrators, and school officials and school employees as mandated reporters.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Jason, any questions?
No.
Great.
Nope.
Thank you. Amy, any questions?
Yeah, my only question is, have we given any thought to what type of training we would provide for board members since it's required by the House bill?
There are some resources that are already available to us that we use as part of the onboarding process for all of our new district employees that I think might be relevant in the training for board members as well. But I can also look in to see what other additional resources would be available and might be a good fit for the roles that you play in the school district.
MSBA also gives, we have to do that training through MSBA as board members. Now, Joe and I had to do it this year, right? Which I think is new.
Everybody has to do it, actually. It's mandated, everybody has to do it, by the way, by June 2nd. If you haven't done it, do it. It's a mandate. Okay, anything else, Amy?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Kristen, any questions?
No, I don't have any.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
Nope.
Thanks. Adam, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
No, thanks, Jeff.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Robin. So the next is 6.12, policy JO, which is student records.
So for this one, the main modification that MSBA has made is that it has removed place of birth in the list of pieces of student information that are considered directory information. I would say in our daily practice in the school district, this particular change doesn't really impact what we are doing. It would just require some updating of some of our documents and materials, but we actually don't even collect place of birth right now on our enrollment form. But it is considered in general usage that place of birth is often listed as directory information and one of the pieces that could be part of directory information. So like I said, it really doesn't change our daily practice.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Amy, any questions?
No.
Okay, thanks. Kristen, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Adam, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Gary, any questions?
No.
Okay, and Jason, any questions?
No.
All right, thank you. Okay. Drum roll, please, for our last policy in the study item 6.13, policy KB, public information. Chris, bring us home.
Hello, everybody. So the change in KB is just one line, and it changes it to align with updates that Missouri made to their whistleblower law, and essentially just reinforces the idea that certain employee speech is protected and prohibits the district from disciplining public employees for commenting on matters of district operations. So it's one sentence that's been changed in this policy, and again, it's just to align with changes in state and federal whistleblower laws.
Great, thank you. Stacy, any questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Amy, any questions?
Nope.
Thank you. Kristen, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Lily, any questions?
Nope, thanks.
Thanks. Adam, any questions? Nope. Thank you. Gary, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Jason, any questions?
No.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Chris. Sean, you want to do checkout?
So I know that Tony probably took some notes and Robin and Chris took some notes during this, but just to highlight some of the things that we're going to follow up on and just kind of make sure that we heard the board. Know that there was some concern about whether or not we would do G, B, E, B, C, and whether or not we want to move forward with that policy. We do feel like that's a policy that we do need to move forward with. There is some clarification with that policy in terms of how we use the word background check. And do we truly know what that means when you say background check? So I want to make sure if we can clarify that. In terms of GBLB, there was some question about private schools and whether or not they have the same type of policies. And so we want to make sure that we might look at the language on that. And then there was also some questions that are brought up around the language with that was centered around the Class C felony in terms of 15-year-olds. And, there might be is there anything we can do around the language that might go to school age students or that's beyond just 15-year-olds? So we'll look at that. And then there was a question about how do we communicate to our employees prohibitions that are part of that. So we will address that. In part of the GDBP, the question around if we have to ever get to the point where we have to do a hearing, not only how do we train the board with the legal aspects of it, but how do we make sure that the board is truly informed about the content that might be pertaining to that, such as sexual misconduct? What does that truly mean? And that we would allow the board to get some type of consultant that would come in and support and educate the board as part of that process. There was also some question around the training as part of the policy JHG, and how are we going to make sure that the board is doing that training? So that's what I've captured.
Awesome, thank you. So I just want to do a quick check. I actually think that once it goes over about an hour and a half on Zoom, it's not best practice, and we're 2.5 hours in. So does everybody, my guess is we can finish the whole rest of the agenda in the next 15 to 30 minutes? Do you want to push through or do you want to take a 5-minute break? What's your pleasure? Thoughts?
2-minute break.
I was going to say push through, and if someone needs a 2-minute break to go do it.
I'll just go do my 2-minute break. I'm fine.
Any other thoughts real quick? I mean, I know our energy is low because again, it's long. 2.5 hours. We've been at this 2.5 hours with our exec. It's too long. Can we push through? Is that okay?
Yep.
Thumbs up if it's okay. And if you need to take a break, just do it. Right? Okay. All right. Okay. We got 4 action items. First one is 7.01, social studies, year 2 self-study. Gary, do we have a motion?
7.01, I move that the Board of Education approves the revised social studies review goals and financials as outlined in the report.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? I'm just opening it up. Anybody? All right, I've seen none. All in favor, make sure you're off mute.
Aye.
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 All right, any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously 7-0. Thank you. All right, 7.02 ELS year 2 self-study. Motion, Gary, please.
7.02, I move that the Board of Education approves the EL review goals and financials as outlined in the report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously 7-0. All right, 7.03, approval of policy JHCD, administration of medications. Your motion.
7.03, I move that the Board of Education approves policy JHCD, administration of medications as submitted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any questions, comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it also passes unanimously. Now, for this next one, I have to recuse myself, and I think the only way really to do that is to leave the meeting. So I'm going to do that right now, and somebody needs to text me to tell me when I can come back, okay? I'm leaving.
All right. So we are on 7.04, part-time temporary employment for Sarah Miller. Gary, can you hit us with a motion?
7.04, I move that the Board of Education approve the part-time temporary employment report as submitted. Somebody say second.
Second.
Okay, any comments or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
I'll text Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you. He's back.
I'm back. Thank you. Okay, so we're moving on to the consent agenda then. 8.01, motion to approve the consent agenda. Gary, do we have a motion?
8.01, I move that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, passes unanimously, 7-0. Awesome. Okay, we are now moving on to the financials, 9.01, the financials. Do we have a motion?
9.01, I move that the Board of Education approve the payment of current expenditures and investments as submitted.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any comments or questions about the financials? Okay, seeing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, also passes unanimously, 7-0. All right, board communications. Does anybody have a board communication? Yes, Stacy, go ahead.
I just wanted to thank all the teachers and say that from my point of view, I've been so impressed how many of them are checking in on their students' mental health. And I know we talk a lot about that, but I've seen teachers that are leading their classes in meditations and doing things like playing relaxing music in the background of their lectures, and even sending surveys checking in on kids and how they're feeling, not even just about academics, but how they're feeling. And I'm really happy to see that. And I also wanted to thank Sean and the administrators and the teachers that have been joining the fire department and the police department in the community parades, because those have been so much fun, I know, for all the neighborhoods. And I think it is like extra special for these kids to see their teachers and administrators and principals, and it helps everybody feel connected to school still. So thanks for that too.
Awesome, thank
We
you.
wanna definitely thank the city too for their partnership and leading that. So
Awesome. Any other board communications? Yes, Lily.
Okay, I wanted to bring up something kind of agenda related and maybe for us to think about. Last meeting, I think it was, Joe, you had talked about that, the idea of moving Sean's, the discussion, Sean's evaluation till, later in the summer sometime. And I was wondering about maybe thinking about that a little bit more, about whether or not it might make more sense to keep it on track and have the current board do the evaluation. And I think some of the reasons that I thought of that might make sense is that I know for like doing evaluations, the fact that, I mean, typically it would be the new board, and we may have 2 or 3 new board members. And as I see it, I think there's going to be a lot of things that you all are going to be dealing with in the summer for next year. And I know being a new board member and doing what the superintendent evaluation process is, and there's a lot of new learning that comes with that. I think there could be some benefits for having Kristen and I still be on the board. We've worked, with Sean this whole year to see both in terms of performance and have familiarity with the evaluation process. So I guess I was just kind of throwing that out there. If you decide differently, that's fine. But that might be something to think about actually getting done on schedule. And I would hope that, I know a lot of us are freed up. I would hope that this wouldn't be too much of a burden on you, Sean, because I think we're spending less time doing some other things, and hopefully that wouldn't be a burden on you to have to do it on the usual schedule. But anyway, so I'm just wanting to throw that out there. So it's not really adding an agenda item, it's just rethinking kind of the schedule of the agenda.
Okay, yeah, we'll consider that. What we had talked about is removing May 18th, which was the time to do that, and doing that on June 10th. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about that. We can discuss that.
Oh, you guys were going to do it at your first meeting?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
First meeting of the new board was going to be the evaluation of Sean and onboarding?
Well, the first meeting is June 3rd. It's a little interesting. So we created we created another meeting. So because of the election is June 2nd, it's a little bit strange. So we have literally a meeting the next day, June 3rd, election June 2nd, then a meeting June 3rd, which is the onboarding. And then we had created another meeting, which is a week later, which would be the evaluation. I mean, that's what we had done. And so, but I mean, we can we can talk about it again, but I mean, just so everybody's aware, that's what we had talked about, and that's where we're moving towards. So
I do have a question about that, about the timing of an evaluation. I think when I came on, the evaluation for Sean was right when I came on as a board member as well. Didn't have as much experience and have as much information. Would it be more fruitful to have it with the old members before they leave, or is it better to have it with new ones who have no experience really with Sean and Sean's leadership in the board?
So
just a question.
Yeah, the reason, and I think you could do it either way, and you could argue it either way, because there's something to be said for a board that has more experience. There's also something to be said, though, for really setting the stage for the new board and them really understanding the superintendent's goals. And maybe even Stacy, you could speak to this, right? Because you kind of, as the newest board member, kind of experienced that. But I think there's really an important learning for even new board members when they go through the process that I think is very positive.
Cool.
Since you kind of threw that to me, Joe, I would say that if we did do this, I don't disagree with Lily. I think it would be beneficial for Kristen and Lily to have input here, because I did feel like as a new board member, I didn't have much to add. But I think if we did do that, that doesn't prevent us from still, of course, sharing the goals with any new school board members, when they join us. We really could do both. But I mean, we could potentially have 3 new board members. So that's a lot of new people that haven't worked with Sean. So we might want to think about it.
So Amy and I, we'll talk about it, right? I mean, and then kind of decide how we move forward, right? I mean, in terms, yeah, so we appreciate it. So any other board communications or thoughts?
Joe, I just wanted to say another word about our student rep, Adam, here, in addition to giving us this insight about what all these students are doing and keeping up with his own activities as a student. Stacy, thanks for sharing that article, and Adam, thanks for writing that article about what's happening with elections in our state and around the country, and just being so focused on things that are beyond what's on your own desk as a student, but a much wider world out there. I was just really, I was just happy to see that you'd done that, and I felt like I got smarter by reading it. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Any other board communication?
Can I just say that I know sometimes it feels a little tedious going through the policies, and tonight probably maybe having the Zoom made it even more tedious, but it is really important that we have opportunities to go through these policies, and taking a chunk of time to do it is helpful because we need to get through so many different policies. So I do appreciate the time and energy it took to be prepared for this meeting, and then asking good questions around it. So thank you.
So thank you, Sean, to you and the all the administrators who stuck with it for a lot of policies too. Thanks to everybody. I will say just one quick thing for you all. On May the 16th, remember we would have had a board PLC on May the 2nd. We won't have a board PLC, obviously a meeting on the 2nd. However, we will do a Zoom gathering of regional board members on the 16th. So just, look for an invitation coming out soon to that, just so everybody knows. Anything else?
Thanks.
All right.
Yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
All right, I move that the Board of Education adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you. Thanks all. Appreciate it.
Thank you.